Well, hello and welcome to Uncut and Unfiltered Cosmetology Insights with Nathan Shaw, where we help you, aspiring and current beauty professionals, master the business and the craft of cosmetology so that you can build a successful, long lasting career. Your guide, as always, is Nathan Shaw, a dedicated educator and working man's hairdresser who successfully built his schools from his earnings from behind the chair. And in this show, he will generously share his deep industry experience and he'll challenge misconceptions that maybe you've heard or might have yourself and teach you the crucial and practical skills you need to manage your career. Whether you're just getting started or you've been in the business a long time, I'm very confident that today will help you. This is super practical. It's one of those episodes I think you're going to listen to. And unfortunately, you might apply it today. Like if you're listening on the way to the salon and you're like, man, I'm glad I listened to that because I had Mary in my chair and I used it right away. So today we're going to talk about how to deal with a difficult client. So Nathan, thanks for being here.
I'm excited to talk about this. Thank you.
Well, we have a framework for this, and the framework is CALM, CALM. So it's acronym. The first letter is going to stand for clarify. You want to clarify upfront expectations for the service or the consultation. Why is this important when talking about disagreements or difficult clients?
I think it's super crucial. If you clarity is really going to help your final result, right? We talk a lot about consultations and what a quality consultation looks like, but early in your career, you're going to have, just out of inexperience, still being new, you'll have some things that don't turn out because of skill level.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, things don't turn out the way a client expects because there wasn't clarity. To your point, and so really getting clear about that, having a consultation where you're asking good open-ended questions, you're repeating back to them what they say to make sure it's like, "Here's what I heard, this is what you want." Because that's gonna help a lot at the end if there's disagreements or meaning that they aren't happy, it's like, "Hey, we talked about this, where was our misalignment?" Right? Um, I love using visuals, pictures, right? Um, and asking things that they don't like, not just what they want, but like, when have you had your hair done that you hated it? And when you really do a thorough consultation for clarity like that, you're number one going to eliminate the opportunities for it to go wrong, but also number two, you're going to have that to go back to if at the end they're unhappy and kind of be like, okay, what went wrong?
Yeah, I think that the visuals is important. I think that it's sometimes people struggle to communicate what they mean because they're talking about something visual.
Hmm.
So it sort of looks like this and it's kind of long here, but it's kind of like if you could take a bit off, it's like, what if you could just show me, it's like me describing an animal without giving the name. It's sort of like, okay, this is what I pictured in my head. And you're like, no, that's not what I was picturing. And so, yeah, the visuals is very, very important. And then I love that also is what do you not want? What's not been done well in the past when you tried to do that. So clarity is the first step when you're dealing potentially with someone difficult is have a standard. You both agreed to this, right?
Yes.
All right. The next one is to acknowledge. So this one we probably gonna spend the most time on, I would think, is when will someone likely start to complain, or when could things start to go south?
The most likely time I've seen has been, unfortunately, when you're finished, right? When you finish it completely, it's styled, whatever, and then they're like, this is not what I expected, or I don't like it.
I mean, is that
Or
95% of the time? I mean, is it
I'd say maybe 85, 90. You're gonna get
yeah,
some people, like in a color service, for example, they'll come back to the shampoo bowl with their hair wet, and wet hair color never looks like dry hair color. And you'll get those clients that will start, like, getting real close to the mirror and looking at it and being like, "Uh-oh, this is not what I wanted," you know? And that may be not what they wanted, and it may be because it's wet, and once it's dry, it'll look
you're right,
different, right?
right.
But it's usually, unfortunately, at the end, and then by that point, you've usually used up the whole appointment time, and now
Oh,
it's
good
like,
point.
"Oh,
All
yeah,
right, so
gotta
let's
figure this
let's
out."
go there, Nathan. You've used all your appointment time. Someone says, "What are you asking the client?" And then let's just do an example of how they might respond. Um, do you say, do you like it? Do you say, how do you love it? Do you what's the question is there anything else I can do? Like, what is the question that they would then give a response to?
Yeah, I mean, it can be a lot of those things. Do you like it? I think if, I teach that to our students, you got to confirm the guest is happy, right? With the service. So ask them if they like it, having them look at it, handing them the hand mirror, let them see the back. The only time most people look at the back of their head, right, is at their
Mhm.
salon appointment.
Yeah.
Um, and just ensure it's like, did this meet your expectations? Is this what you had in mind? All those types of questions. And that's usually when you're gonna get the feedback. If yeah, positive or negative. So
Is there a benefit to a more open-ended, how do you feel about it versus do you love it? Because do you love it? It's like that's pretty high, you know?
yeah,
Is
yeah,
there a benefit to saying, "How are you feeling as you look at this? How do you feel
yeah.
about it?"
I
And then they could kinda go, "Oh, it's good," you know? But if they don't love it, then it's a disappointment, you know? Is it a 10 out of 10? You're like, "It's an 8." Well, that's pretty good, you know? But it's also not as good as a 10, you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah.
So, but you're gonna ask, and then let's just keep playing this out. What are some responses that people could give, and let's just say it's on a cut?
So yeah, I mean, to your point, I think open-ended questions are the best because it's not just a yes or no, and they've got to like what how do you feel about it? What do you think? Those types of things. What do you think of the result? Um, you're gonna get more open feedback. And usually what's gonna happen if it's a cut, for example, it can be where too short, not short enough. I don't like the layers. Um, you know, uh, I think of one my brother did on a little girl. He'd done the dad's hair for years. He brought his daughter and she wanted bangs. And they showed a picture and my brother executed those bangs flawlessly. Now, granted, this girl's like 9 years old, right? Maybe 9 or 10. Like I saw the picture because I worked right next to him and like the bangs, look just like the bangs in the picture. But what it is like with most people, they see a picture and they think they're going to look like that person. And now she was still looked like herself, but with bangs, and she didn't like it, right? Now the little girl didn't say much, but her face said everything, her facial expression. So sometimes
Yeah.
it's gonna be that too, the facial expression.
Mm,
We talk about how much of communication is nonverbal.
mhm.
You're usually gonna see cues if they're not saying much that's
Yeah,
positive.
yeah. So, let's say I mean, the easy one is, I think we need to take off more. Like, it seems like it's not as much of a change as I wanted it to be. I mean, I'm a pretty simple if you're watching on YouTube, I'm a pretty simple cut, and it's sort of like, did I cut off enough? I'm like, "No, keep going," then we're good. You know what I mean? That's about as complex as my cut gets. Um, but with someone who says, that's not a it seems like there was gonna because maybe it's wet, sweat, sweat, and then they dry it out, and it's like, "Oh, it's I wanted more off," right? In that moment, they're not happy. Do you say, "No problem, we'll do that right now"? I mean, do you 'cause you don't want to book them for a 3 days later, right?
Yeah, yeah. I always try to, if you can do it in the moment without you also don't wanna, if sometimes you'll have another guest that's showing up right at the time if you're booked solid, right? So you've got to think about the incoming guest. There's a lot to juggle there, right? Their expectations, not throwing off the rest of your day or canceling someone else. But also, you have a very real responsibility to the guest in your chair to make them happy.
Yeah, I mean, is there a case, though, that you kind of know your clients well enough? Like, if I'm in the chair and my person comes to me and says, "Hey, Andy, I need to this is gonna go a little long. Are you good?" And they know me, they know I'm gonna be like, "Yeah, no problem." You know?
Yeah,
Right? Like,
exactly.
so the point is it's better to do that than communicate. I would much rather them say, "It's gonna be 10 more minutes," than to leave me waiting 10 minutes. If
No,
you
I
ask
think,
me for 10 more minutes, I'm good. You make me wait 10 minutes, I'm
yeah.
not nice Andy anymore.
No, I think that's key. It really comes down to communication. Um, and that's what, if your whole day is going to get behind, right? Maybe you hopefully have a front desk person or someone that can start calling guests and telling them, like, hey, he's running a little bit behind.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
You know, do you need to reschedule or is that okay if you just show up a little later? But yeah, communicating with the guest that's there, making sure it's okay. And then also with the guest that's in your chair to like, okay, let's, because some things you can correct. If it's something like taking a little more off, you may be able to do in a short amount of time.
Right.
If it's a color service that you just spent 2.5 to 3 hours on, that's not going to happen. Right.
Alright, well,
So
let's talk about the tough ones, okay? Which is the hair is dry, the color is there. Um, one of the realities, like, my wife has said to me, "You don't see colors well." Like, I'm like, "That's blue." She's like, "That's gray." I'm like, "That's green." She's like, "That's blue." You know what I mean? Like some people just don't have as much of a spectrum of color.
Mhm.
Meaning you could look at the same color as sort of that famous thing. I don't know how long ago that was. Like it's a dress gold or blue or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like you just people just saw a different color. What do you do when you're like, this is the color that's there? And like, what do you do when someone doesn't like a color?
At the end of the day, I mean, there's that old saying, "The customer's always right," but it's they're wearing their hair. They're the one that has to live in it, right? So, you don't wanna get argumentative. You may wanna point out like, if they have a picture, you can be like, show them side by side, be like, "I feel it's pretty close, but what do you see differently?"
Right.
Is it too warm? Is it like you're seeing too much golden tones in your hair if it's a blonde, for example, or is it too ashy and cool?
Yeah.
Um, is the red, there's so many ways, but you're gonna have to
Yeah.
ask
It's
specific
so tough though,
questions.
Nathan. Like, what do you do? Like, I mean, what are your options? I mean, talk them into it, or do you say, okay, well, we're going to have to book another appointment, and where I can try to go back in and whatever, or do you say, listen, there's nothing we can do today. You have an option of, rebooking for another time. We're gonna have to. It's gonna be 2 hours again. It's not gonna cost you anything, but it's gonna be 2 hours. Or do you say, listen, I'm really truly sorry that you're not as satisfied as you'd like to be. You are a regular customer. Can I, do you offer them a discount on their next service? I mean, what are the options when someone is genuinely unhappy?
Those are all great examples, and I think those are kind of the options, right? There's some things that you may have time even on as a color that won't put you real far behind. If it's a color that the tone needs changed slightly, there's toners that can take like 10 minutes. Of course, their hair will still be wet after it's washed out. So there's blow drying time, etc. But there's also like maybe they needed to go darker, maybe you went too light. Those are easier fixes that take less time. The other ones are going to be a multi-hour appointment. And if you don't have time then, yeah, you got to talk about getting them rescheduled, talking to them about how it's not going to cost them to get it fixed. You're there to make sure they're satisfied. And you may want to give them a discount, especially if it's been a good loyal guest. Like, hey, your next time too is, we're gonna do 50% off or whatever it is, to let them know you really want to take care of them. Um, by doing those things, I think it just shows you value their satisfaction with what you're providing, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, customer satisfaction with how you make them feel and, not just validating them, but like that they feel that their wants and needs are getting met by you in a way that they expect is going to lead to customer loyalty.
And for those who are new to the industry or haven't experienced this, an unhappy customer is about 10 times or 20 times more likely to talk about a service than a happy one,
Yeah.
which is really unfortunate. I mean, go to your neighborhood or community Facebook page and see how many are like, I just had a great time at Burgers R Us. And how many of them are, I went to Burgers R Us and it was horrible. I mean, it's like, what's the percentage? And it's like 5% positive and 95% negative. I mean, that's just human nature, I guess. So those are your options. The first and most important thing, though, is that you validate and acknowledge. I'm sorry you're unhappy with that. I'm sorry you're not. I'm sorry it didn't turn out the way you wanted it to. And then to listen, to de-escalate, and then the next for the L is to offer solutions, to lead with solutions. So we have clarify your expectations, acknowledge their issue. Don't try to dismiss it. But L is to lead with solutions. So that's where you shift the energy away from like, oh, to no, here's their solutions. And so you want to keep calm. You maybe want to make sure your face is not showing how you're feeling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
100%. You know, and to that point, we have, just like we talked about, if someone will say right away whether they're unhappy, their face may tell you.
Right.
It's the same. I've seen it a lot in salons, right? If someone gets negative feedback or they're told they're unhappy with the cut or the color, stylist faces will show it too sometimes. Like either like the puzzled look or the astonished or even hurt feelings look because they take it, they consider themselves artists a lot of times. And so it feels like their art's being rejected, if you will. And that can be an emotional experience for a lot of stylists. You've got to be able to separate that. And then to your point, like, here's what we can do to fix this. After you've heard them out, you take the time to acknowledge and listen to them and then say, here's some options we have. Give them a couple options that are going to hopefully remedy it and let them know by doing that, leading with solutions, it shows you're still trying to help them.
Right. And maybe they say, "You know what? I don't love it, Nathan, but given those options, I'm okay with it." And maybe, I mean, could you offer them a discount on that day? Like, I really want you to be happy. One of the options is that you live with it. You're okay with it. You go, "Okay, it's not perfect, but it's still good." So here are your options, and maybe not force them into an option, which is like, well, you need to make another appointment. You could say, we could, if you're comfortable just saying that's good enough, it's not perfect, but it's good enough. I would love to give you this discount today, just so you could feel good about our interaction, right?
Absolutely.
Or could you live with it? And then the next time you come in for a regular cut, I'm happy to give you 50% off because I always want you to be happy. I always want you to leave happy. And I might go, yeah, yeah, that seems fair, right? But
So
I
yeah,
think giving people an option or options makes them not feel cornered.
absolutely. And I'll do the same thing with, if they need to come back in right away because you can't get them in that time. Um, and this is going to depend on the salon environment you're in. If you're an employee and the salon has specified hours, but there's times I'm gonna be like, "Hey, I'll come in extra early tomorrow morning, or before your work, or come back later tonight and we'll hit it again." You know what I mean?
Wow.
I haven't done it. Had to do it. Fortunately, a lot of times we found other options, but there's times, I remember a couple times I worked on clients till probably 1 or 2 in the morning to fix, and then at other times I was in the salon, at 6 a.m. because it's like I was going to get their hair done so they could go into work and be done the next day,
Yeah,
finished.
coffee and cuts right there.
Yeah.
Coffee and cuts. Yeah, absolutely. So when you're talking about those solutions, again, I think that I want to give everyone listening a very practical phrase to use when you have these situations come up that I think will help you reframe what's happening, but also it will help the customer feel good, which is to use the word interesting instead of uh-oh or no or to even disagree. So if someone says, "You know what? It's just not as red as I want." Instead of you saying, "Well, it's the exact same color in the picture." If you would respond, "Interesting. Tell me more about that." That's different than, "No, it's the red."
Yeah.
Like, you know, I find myself, and where I apply it is when I find myself in a situation which I'm stuck. Instead of saying, "Crap, this sucks, I'm mad, da da da," I just go, "Interesting." Like I was driving to, see my family and there was this big old traffic backup. And instead of saying, "Oh crap," and da da da, I went, "Interesting. I wonder what's going on." It's this curiosity versus like the whole world's tumbling down around me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if the world
No,
is
that's right.
tumbling down around you, it's better just to say interesting, right? So let's talk about the end of this. Let's wrap this up with this reality. There are some clients that it's not because you messed up, they're just difficult people. So let's get away from the you made a mistake or they're unhappy for even really something that is within the realm of possibility. What do you do? And this is the M, which is to manage the boundary. So we've clarified what we're going to do for them. We acknowledge their unhappiness. We offer or we lead with solutions. And then the M is that we have to manage boundaries, really manage boundaries around what we're going to put up with, what we're going to tolerate, what is okay. Can you maybe share some stories and then guide us through what do you do when someone just is you do not want them to come into the salon anymore. You have to end that relationship. What would someone have to do in order for you to do that? And then how do you handle it?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great way to say it with managing the boundaries because at the end of the day, the old saying, I'm not here to be someone's punching bag, right? Like we're providing a service and our goal is to hopefully leave them with a great experience and to please them with that service. But just to take abuse from someone over and over. And to your point, some people have a bad day or sometimes it doesn't turn out and they're upset. But it's when you start, you know, for me, I can usually handle 1 or 2 of those. But it's like if it starts to be a consistent thing and you notice a pattern, it's like, okay, this just isn't working. Right. And you've got to be able to not dread seeing that client on your books, dread the
Yeah.
day going into work that that client's going to be coming in because it affects your whole day and kind of the energy you're going to carry into the rest of your clients for that day. Right.
But is this the reality also the reality? And I'm not it's not one side or the other, but I mean, listen, I believe that God loves all people, but that doesn't mean I have to hang out with all of them or let like them to be my clients, you know? Um, so the boundary around that, I guess I'm saying is if someone is, I'm just trying to give some scope of to this. If someone is just never happy with the service you provide, it's like, then I'm just not your person. You know what I mean? Like if every time I do this, it's like, why do you keep coming back? And it's literally they might be that if they're complaining about that, probably every restaurant they go to, like they're saying, no, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's probably not just you. That's just
Yeah.
kind of who they are, right?
Yep.
And so you don't want that. But the other reality is maybe every time they come in, they just complain about sort of everything and everyone except for them or their spouse or their kids or the government or the whatever they're whatever it might be that you're just like, I don't want to be around this person anymore. Guide us through how do you do that? What do you do with that, Nathan?
Well, a prime example I can think of is a client I had. I did her hair for a few years. Um, and she wasn't like generally unpleasant, but she just was never completely satisfied. And I noticed things and like not just noticed it, it was obvious. Meaning like she would come in and get her hair cut and colored and um hair grows about a half inch a month, right? Which is that's just pretty common. And she had a lot of gray and we're coloring her hair dark. So you notice that white against the dark hair after a few weeks because it's such contrast in that half inch. Well, she would call in and insist the color washed off, which permanent color doesn't work that way, chemically or scientifically. But um, and for a couple times she'd come in and I'd talk to her like, well, Annabelle, this is about a half inch worth of growth, and I saw you 4 weeks ago, so that's normal. That's new growth. And she'd argue with me and said, say it was like that after first week, and so I would redo it for free, and then about 4 weeks later she'd come in for her next appointment, which have the same amount of regrowth, and she'd pay. So she'd pay about every other time, and
Wow.
so one thing I saw, and I remember doing her hair one time, and she was on the phone the whole almost 2 hours she's there to get colored and cut with different like her phone bill, she was fighting the phone bill price.
Yeah.
She was
Yeah.
fighting, I mean, literally, like, that's what she did the whole 2 hours was, like, fight with people on her bills, trying to get them down,
Yeah.
and, I mean, it was obvious to me from my experience, this is kinda what she does.
That's not kind of what she does.
It is what she does, yeah,
It's what she does. Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I told her at that appointment, I said, "Here's the deal, Hannabella, it's like, if you if this color really fades off in a week, like you say, you need to call me right then, not 4 weeks later, and we'll do it then. Otherwise, I'm charging you in 4 weeks." So she literally called me a week later, I think to the day, and said that it washed off, but she has to leave town for a couple weeks.
Oh, Annabelle, Annabelle, Annabelle.
Yeah,
Annabelle.
it was one of those.
I was not born yesterday, Annabelle, you know?
Yeah, and
And even if
that
I was, I still think I know that's a lie, you know?
exactly. And that was the point I did have to have the discussion. I said to her, I said, "Listen, Annabelle, I think I'm not able to meet your expectations and needs, and you probably need to find a new stylist." At which point, of course, she's no, 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 and I'm like, "No, I just, this happens every appointment. You say that it's washing off. Yeah, I think you need to find a new stylist." And
Yeah, and to be clear, and I love the way you said that, and I don't mean to make a joke of this because it's not a joke, it's your livelihood, but it's like, I can't meet your expectations because, and I'm not, this is not a joke, but because you expect to get a free service.
yeah,
That's why you couldn't meet her expectations.
exactly.
She didn't want to pay you.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, if you expect to not pay, I'm not your guy.
yeah,
You know? So, yeah, that's a fair thing to say, it's a kind thing to say. It's not, "You're a con artist, and you're ripping me off, and I got kids to feed, and this is ridiculous, and you do it every time." You could do that. I would
yep,
not, right?
yeah, yeah,
Take the high road and say, "This is not working," and, just even say why. "Well, why is it not working?" "I just don't think that we're a good fit for each other, and I think that you're gonna be happier somewhere else, but I'm not able to continue to work and do," and you can well, you have to. "No, I don't." I mean, what are they gonna say? "You have to?" Like, "Why?" This just isn't, and I think it's the less words you use, the better.
yeah,
Make
yeah,
it be concise. Know what you're gonna say, right?
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
because
a good
you
word.
start over explaining it, and they're gonna try to work their way back in there,
No,
right?
I think you've got your phrase, and you've And again, use the language from this, it's, I appreciate, and again, you could, we call it the bookends of love. If you've heard of that phrase, there's
Yeah, yeah.
a hard news sandwich, which
Yep,
is
yep.
like, hey, I really have appreciated and thank you so much for being a loyal customer for this many years. That's the one first piece of bread or the first bookend. I'm realizing a lot of people probably don't know what a bookend is, but it's two things that hold up a stack of books on either end. But anyway, the beginning, then the middle is the hard part.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to. This is gonna have to be our last appointment. That's the hard part, right? And then the end is, something positive. You're a lovely person, and I had such a great time learning about you and your family, and again, I wish you the best. And it's positive, something hard, and then something positive, and then the sandwich is done. The bookends are done. You move on. You know, but is there something also? And we'll end with this, Nathan. Speak to someone who's like, man, guys, that scares me. It scares me to let that person go.
Absolutely. I can only think of a until I, you know, sold my first salon and had to I called it breaking up with my clients at that point because it wasn't about firing them as much as breaking up, right? When I had to break up with those clients. Before that, I'd only really, I think, fired or, 2 clients that I told them I think we're not a good fit. So luckily I didn't have to do it much. And it is scary because, I think the first one, especially the first one, because I was still building my clientele.
Yeah.
And when you're young and you're hungry and you're trying to,
When you're hungry,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
you'll tolerate a lot of abuse sometimes from your guests. And
absolutely. Yeah.
but this one was just so um, she was
Egregious.
yeah,
Yeah.
egregious and vicious. And I was like, okay, this isn't working for me and I'm not gonna put myself
Were
through
they
it.
negative? What was the
Yeah, just a very negative person, very entitled. They
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 talked
didn't
down to
earn the
you and
money, but they came from money, like a lot of money, and
uh-huh.
they'd kinda gotten what they wanted their whole lives, and expectations were, like, unrealistic, and even though we'd have consultations about the expectations and the realities of what we could do, it was never
Never
good
good
enough.
enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that was rough, but it was, like, so relieving to get rid of her, and the interesting part is, like, you forget that people around you and, in the salon, it's not like we're having this loud conversation, but, like, they heard the conversation be saying, "Hey, this isn't working out."
Absolutely.
And literally, like, after the lady walked out and she was upset that I was no longer gonna do her hair, the stylist next to me, their client said, "Dude, that was so awesome. She was horrible." Like, so other
The
people know.
client.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, it's not." It's kind of
Yeah.
reaffirming to be like, "It's not me. This client is impossible to
Well, and
please."
also to understand that you're letting that in your environment.
Yeah,
It's not like
and other
I've got a skunk and they only come in once a month, but it's like, yeah, I know, but everybody can smell that.
yeah,
You know what I
exactly.
mean? And it's not contained to your chair. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
Um, that's the reality that and I think that's a healthy thing as a culture, to know is like, it's okay to fire clients here. Or we want you to fire clients, It's I think that a healthy business at some point says, "You're not the right customer for us." So I also think it is a measure of your self-worth, of a kind of business you wanna run, that at some point you do say, like, there's the old phone company Sprint, which is now bought by T-Mobile, but there was a story once that they fired 5% of their customers, and it's because the 5% of their customers were taking, like, 30% of the man-hours of their customer service.
Interesting. Yeah,
And it was costing them too much to keep those customers, emotionally and time wise. And so also it can be addition by subtraction. You're
100%.
going to be happier. You could get a different client eventually. Your coworkers are going to like you more. They're not going to like, Nathan. Why do you let them keep coming back? You know what I mean? Please fire them. You know what I mean? So there is that as well. So Nathan, I appreciate your vulnerability and honesty about your experience. I hope that those who are listening will take this and put it into place. If one of your first customers, your first 10 customers, clients turns out to be a dud, it is okay to let them go. In fact, you should. You are worth it. You will find someone else, and you don't want to tolerate that. You get what you tolerate, and you are valuable. Your gift and your skill is important, and don't put up with that. Don't put up with that, and set that precedent early. Nathan, I'll give you the last word.
No, I think that's great. You said something that really struck a chord with me that I think is very true. Like the type of business you create is not just by the customers that you attract, but it's also the customers that you realize you're not aligned with and that shouldn't be, and that goes for any type of business. I've seen it in our salon environment where it's like, okay, these types of clients, we know who we want as clients, but we also know who we don't want. It's even the same with our schools. It's like we want to educate the next generation of hairdressers, but not everyone's a fit for us, and we're not a fit for everyone. When you try to be all things to all people, it usually doesn't work, right? So I think getting crystal clear on like what you accept and, like I said, what you tolerate is going to create the environment you want to be in.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nathan. I appreciate your wisdom. And folks, if you're looking for a school to go to, you want to understand what are the questions I should ask if I'm going to go into this industry, then all of our past episodes are available. But also, we've got a free guide for you. You can find a link to that free guide. It's got a bunch of short videos, easy to consume, very engaging. And they'll answer a lot of questions. And then, in addition, if you're like, no, I want to do this, but I want to talk to someone, I'm really interested in going to a school, then Nathan has schools in multiple cities, and you could reach out to those admissions team members, and they literally wake up every day and they want to talk to you. There's someone who's like, please call. I want to answer your questions. So, all that contact information is also in the show notes. Nathan, as always, thanks for your time.
Appreciate your time as well. Thanks, Andy.